I was in this story, there would be no story, okay? If this happened to me, it just wouldn't. It would not happen to me. Because if a stranger came up to my door and said, oh, they used to live in my house and they want to see, that's going to be a flat out no. Hello book besties, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. My name is Kiera and I am so excited to have you here. In today's video, I am giving you 10 book recommendations for books that made me forget that I was reading. Now, when I say that I forget I was reading, what I really mean is that these books kind of felt like you were watching a movie in your head. Like the mental image that I got while reading these books was so strong, and so I would recommend them if you're somebody who maybe has a shorter attention span, maybe you need something right now that's really gonna grip you, or you're in a reading slump and you just need something that's going to break that slump. These are some books that I recommend that are perfect for that. Now, the books on today's list, I tried to keep them mostly as standalones. I didn't want to include too many series on this list just because I feel like for books like these that feel like movies, you need something fast, you need something that's going to get you out of a reading slump. You don't need another commitment or potentially like another 7-book series that is going to put you in another slump. So that's what I'm going to have in today's video, but I could not resist these 2 series that I have to put on this list. I will leave those 2 near the end. For me, there were certain books in these series that read to me like movies. I forgot I was reading while I was reading them, and overall, they're just really good recommendations to keep your attention. Before I get into it, besties, like always, I just want to let you know that this list is completely subjective. These are all my opinions. Obviously, your experience may be different. You may read these books and they do not give you the same feelings that they gave me. So as always, I always recommend that you gather a bunch of different recommendations that could give you these similar feelings. Now, the first book on our list, I do just want to preface this by saying I am absolutely going to butcher this author's name. First up on our list, we have What Happened to Nina by Dervla McTiernan. I am so sorry if I butchered that name. I just want to preface this by saying I did read this physically for parts, and then I also listened to the audiobook for this, and I really do recommend the audiobook. It was so immersive, and it had different voices to narrate the different characters that we follow. So I do recommend that you give the audiobook a try if you are somebody who likes audiobooks. I also always recommend audiobooks when you're in a slump because I feel like they can kind of help you break up the reading a little bit. Now, What Happened to Nina is a thriller. So in this book, we follow this girl named Nina and her boyfriend. I already forgot the boyfriend's name, so I'm so sorry, but what's important here is Nina. He's not really that important. But basically, Nina and her boyfriend go on a hiking trip, and Nina goes missing. That is, cue the title, What Happened to Nina. Now, the interesting part of this book, and something that I found so unique, is that in this book, we're actually following Nina's parents and the boyfriend's parents. We are not following Nina, and we're not really following the boyfriend. We also get the detective on Nina's case, which all of these components I found really interesting for a thriller. And the other reason why this book read like a movie and made me forget I was reading is that in this book, we not only have the thrilling aspect of these parents trying to piece together what happened to Nina and try and clear the boyfriend's name, but we also get commentary on rich versus poor. You know, Nina's family is not as well off versus the boyfriend's family. They are a little bit more wealthy, and you get a lot of commentary on social classes and things like that. So that was super interesting to read about, and it's part of the reason why I felt that this book really did make me forget that I was reading. I am so sorry, everybody. I had to stop the video real quick. I am trying to remember what I was literally just talking about when it comes to What Happened to Nina. I lost the thought. The other thing that I personally like about What Happened to Nina is I don't see a ton of people talk about it. I don't see this book circulating a lot on like BookTube and BookTok. So if you're looking for something maybe a little bit more unique, that's not as hyped as some of the other reads on this list, What Happened to Nina could be a great choice for you. The next book on our list is called Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. Now, before I get into this one, let me just preface this by saying this book is one of the scarier ones that we have on today's list. So if you have a weaker stomach, if you are someone who's easily scared, maybe sit this one out. So Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter is about these two sisters, Claire and Lydia. They drift apart when they are adults, and they have a sister, Julia, who went missing like decades ago. And Claire's husband passes away. And so now the two sisters are starting to piece together links and dark truths that connect Claire's husband with the missing sister. And that's basically where we go from there. I don't really want to say too much else about this premise, but it is a really good book. Like I said, it's kind of disgusting, so keep that in mind, but it definitely made me forget that I was reading. So I just could picture everything that was going on. It definitely read like a movie, and I would definitely recommend if you are somebody who can handle the kind of things that happen in this book. Unfortunately, I really can't say without spoiling anything, but just know this one does kind of teeter on dark, and this book is also kind of scary. Now, I know on this channel I've been kind of leaning more towards thrillers and horrors, but I do want to let you guys know I am a mood reader through and through, so I do read other genres as well. And the next book on our list of books that made me forget I was reading is actually The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. Now, this book is a fantasy. It is not a romantasy, so don't get misled. It is definitely a fantasy. In this book, we follow Mamoru and Misaki. Mamoru is a 14-year-old boy. Misaki is his mother, and she's also like a secret warrior, like a secret baddie. So in this story, our characters live in a very isolated village, and they are starting to learn that their government is doing some very shady things. And so basically, in this book, you watch this family handle themes of grief, loss, war, and generational trauma. So this book is a little on the heavier side as well, but it is a very emotional read and one that definitely made me forget that I was reading. And the mom, Misaki, oh my goodness. She is probably the best FMC that I have read about in a fantasy book, and probably one of my top favorites of all time. But this book is amazing. It will leave you sobbing, and I definitely recommend, because it definitely reads like a movie. I will say too, if you're somebody who kind of shies away from fantasy because of the world building, or, you know, trying to just wrap your head around like complicated world building and stuff like that, I personally find that M.L. Wang's worlds are pretty easy to understand. And I think her writing about these different topics like war and grief and loss, it does kind of make up for the complications that you might feel about reading fantasies. And the reason why I say that is because in her books, yes, you're kind of in this other world, this other fantasy world that she created, but the themes and the central parts of what makes her stories beautiful are the same throughout our world and their world. So that's why I think it might be a little bit easier for you to grasp the Sword of Kaigen, because yes, there is world building, but also the central themes of the story you're definitely going to be able to understand. So don't let the fantasy part intimidate you. It's very easy to understand and grasp. Next up, I kind of have a sci-fi thriller blend. I have mentioned this book before in another video, my most recent video, if you guys want to check that out. But this book is called The One by John Mars. And the reason why I put this on this list is because this book literally read like a Black Mirror episode. Like, I am so shocked that Black Mirror has not teamed up with John Mars or something to create a movie for their show. This would be perfect for a Black Mirror episode or Black Mirror movie. So The One by John Mars is about this DNA test. This DNA test goes public, and basically if you take the DNA test, you will learn who your ultimate soulmate is. And all of this sounds great, but in this book, we follow 5 couples who take this test, they get their ultimate soulmate, and instead of finding happily ever after, they're starting to learn that this is going to be a very, very big nightmare for them. So that's basically the premise without kind of spoiling too much. This is another one that is very fast-paced. I read this book in one sitting, and I definitely forgot I was reading. It read just like a movie. In this book, you do get multiple POVs because, like I said, there are 5 couples, but each of their chapters leaves off on a cliffhanger. So I wouldn't let that kind of put you off of there having like so many POVs. You will keep up with it, and the cliffhangers just makes you want to keep reading each chapter, each story, and each POV. Like, to me, there wasn't a point where I was bored or looking forward to one couple more than the other. All of their stories were very like chilling and weird and crazy things happening. Now, in case thrillers aren't your thing, or sci-fi isn't your thing, or maybe fantasy is not your thing, I do have another recommendation, and that is next up on our list. I have The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah. This book is a historical fiction, and in this book we follow 2 sisters, Vianne and Isabel, and these 2 sisters are living in Nazi-occupied France in World War II. These 2 sisters are very, very different. They lead completely different paths in World War II in France. So that in itself is very interesting because you're getting 2 completely different women who experience 2 different things during the same event. This book, I will say, it is going to make you cry. It is one of the saddest books that I have ever read, but also so beautiful and touching. I love this story so much. It definitely made me forget I was reading, and it's one of those stories that I think I will like always remember. This book was so gripping and emotional and raw and real, and I loved it so much. Oh, and also let me just mention, The Nightingale literally has a movie coming out. I don't know when it's coming out, but it's in the works. So yeah, I definitely recommend read this before the movie comes out. That way you'll have a good knowledge of what this book is about before the movie comes out. You're welcome. Now, next up on our list, I think we have my favorite book of all time. I read a lot of books, and this one has to be, if it's not my favorite, it has to be like in my top 5, I swear. This book is We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kliewer. Now, I want to kind of explain what this is, but before I do that, I just want to let you know this is another horror. It's marketed as a horror. To me, it was not that scary. For you, it might be. There are a couple scenes in here that are a little bit more graphic, so keep that in mind. But in the grand scheme of things, maybe it's just because I've read like some really messed up stuff, but this book was not super scary. Now, let me go into the premise. So in this book, we follow a lesbian couple who move into a new house. Now, one day, there's this family that comes to their front door, and they knock, and our main character answers, and they say, "Hi, we used to live here. Can we look around?" And could you imagine? She says yes. She actually says yes and lets them into her home. Now, if that isn't bad enough, they're looking around and just something keeps happening and they do not leave. She has the hardest time getting these people to leave. Now, let me just say, if I was in this story, there would be no story, okay? If this happened to me, it just wouldn't. It would not happen to me. Because if a stranger came up to my door and said, "Oh, they used to live in my house and they want to see," that's going to be a flat out no. That's going to be a no thank you. I am so sorry. No, I don't think so. If that was her response, we would not have had a story, so that's probably why I have not been written into a horror book. Now, this book, it read like a movie, but it was the most stressful book I've ever read. If you've watched the movie Coraline, this book kind of gives that feeling. I personally love the movie Coraline. I watch it every single spooky season, and this book just reminded me so much of that movie. Like, the vibes of Coraline are similar to the vibes of this book, and it was just extremely stressful. I was sweating the entire time reading this book because the things that happen are just like what? Like, I was just like, what is going on the entire time I was reading this book? Very much in confusion, but the good kind of confused. But yeah, I definitely recommend. This is such a mind-twisty game. Oh, and if you're somebody who likes mixed media, there are mixed media in this book, and it just adds to the book. Like, there are so many pieces to this book. It is so good. So I definitely recommend. Again, this is probably like my favorite book of all time. So I guess if you're going to take any of my recommendations, take this one. I love, love, love We Used to Live Here. Next up on our list, we have another book that I have mentioned previously. It is called Count My Lies by Sophie Stava. Sophie Stava. I'm going to continue mispronouncing her name. This is a domestic thriller about this woman named Sloane. Sloane goes to a park and she runs into this dad and his daughter, and for whatever reason, she lies to them and tells them that she is a nurse. This lie aids her into landing this job as their nanny. That's not even the worst part. As Sloane is working for them, she starts to realize that this family has a lot more secrets than they let on. And maybe she isn't the only one who's lying. That is all I'm going to give you as far as the premise for Count My Lies. This book is another one that definitely reads like a movie. And the reason why I love this book so much is because the women in this story are absolutely unhinged. They are insane. And it just added to the best feelings of reading this book. It was so fast-paced, it read like a movie, and it definitely made me forget that I was reading. Now, next up on our list is one of the newest books on our list, and one of my most recent reads. I actually finished reading this over last weekend. It is called We Burn So Bright by TJ Klune. This book is super, super short, but it definitely reads like a movie. Let me kind of explain what it's about. So We Burn So Bright is about this gay couple who are married and they take an RV trip. Now the crazy part is they're taking this RV trip at the end of the world. Like, they live in this dystopian world where the world is ending, and so they decide to take a trip. I cannot tell you why they take this trip because I didn't see it mentioned on the blurb, and I don't really want to spoil anything for you. It did read like a movie. It was so emotional and such a beautiful story about humanity and the way that we treat each other and kindness and love. But there is one little issue with it, and this might be purely a me thing. I just thought it was too short. I could have read 200 to 300 more pages about this couple that we follow in the book. I do know that TJ Klune has other books that are extremely successful, so I will be reading some of his other stuff. This was my first TJ Klune book. I just picked this up for like book club. This book definitely read like a movie. It made me forget that I was reading, and I so wish that we had just more to this story. I just felt like some parts were a little bit rushed through, and we could have spent a little bit more time kind of piecing together some of the parts of this book. But other than that, it was a really great story, and I definitely recommend, especially if you just want something that's like really fast to add to your like monthly wrap-up or something, this would be perfect. I read it in like a couple hours. It was very, very good. Now, like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I do have 2 books that are part of a series in this list, and I just could not leave them out because they really did read like movies, and they made me forget that I was reading, so I have to include them, but I won't be too hurt if you don't read these as they are part of a series, and I understand not wanting to commit to an entire series just to read these specific books. So, at number 9, we have Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yaros. Now, before you judge me, this is such a good series. Like, it's really fast-paced, and if you're a thriller reader and you want to maybe like dabble in something else, honestly, Fourth Wing could be a really good option for you. Yes, it is a cheesy romantasy, but there is a lot of action and a lot of story in this book. So Fourth Wing is this series about this girl named Violet. Violet is very frail and fragile. I know. You're saying it in your head. Every romantasy is about this very fragile, skinny girl. It's part of the plot, okay? Violet's frailness and fragileness is part of the plot, and she is the daughter of a general, and her mother is making her go to Besties War College. Now, in this college, she has to not only learn how to fight, but she also has to bond a dragon. Like a literal dragon. It is so good. The beginning of this book, it kind of gave How to Train Your Dragon vibes, just because she's like so skinny and frail and a little nerdy, and so is Hiccup. So I don't know, that was like a random tidbit, but it is really good. Now, you do have an enemies to lovers storyline in Fourth Wing as well, and it was just really fun. I love this series. I read all 3 books. Fourth Wing is my favorite because it's the most fast-paced, and it just has something going on like every single page that you are reading, and there are definitely a lot of cliffhangers in this book as well. It did make me forget that I was reading. For me, it was a 5-star. For you, it might not be. I know some people have read this and they just don't think that the quality of the writing is quite there. I am not one of those people. I absolutely ate this book up. So yeah, I do recommend because it is a very fun time, and for me, it felt like a movie. And I read this book so fast. And last but certainly not least, we have Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. Now, I mean, if you don't know about this book, if you don't love this book, I don't know. I really don't know what to tell you. This book is amazing. It is part of the Hunger Games series by Suzanne Collins, and you do have to read the rest of the series before you read this one. I know that there is some discussion online as to whether or not you can read this book first, because in the timeline of things, it happens before the Hunger Games. I am here to tell you, do not do that. There are things that are not really explained in Sunrise on the Reaping that are explained in the Hunger Games because it's the most recent release. So do not read Sunrise on the Reaping first. Go through the Hunger Games, read the one book about President Snow. I didn't really like that one very much. And then read Sunrise on the Reaping. I promise you, you will have a way better experience. Sunrise on the Reaping follows Haymitch. It follows his Hunger Games. And honestly, this book really explains why Haymitch is the way that he is in the Hunger Games. I absolutely love this book. It is the darkest in the series. It's also already confirmed to be made into a movie, so it's very fitting for this list. But it definitely reads like a movie too. Like, this book was so good. It was so twisted, and it kind of explains a lot. I love that Suzanne Collins wrapped up so many plot points from the original trilogy, from President Snow's book, and she just tied together so many things and answered so many questions in Sunrise on the Reaping. This book was so good. I cannot wait to see how they do the film. I know, personally, I love the Hunger Games movies. I thought they did a pretty good job, so I'm not super nervous for Sunrise on the Reaping. I think it will be a great movie, but just the things that happen in this book are so dark that it does worry me a little bit, because this book is so dark and the tone is a little bit more intense than the original trilogy. So keep that in mind while you read it. It is a very intense book, but it definitely made me forget that I was reading. It is my favorite book in the series, and it explains Haymitch's character so much. All right, and that is going to wrap up my 10 recommendations for books that made me forget that I was reading, or 10 books that read like movies. I don't really know what I'm going to title this just yet, but thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, let me know if these books made you feel the same way when you read them. Also, let me know, did you like that I included more genres? Or do you prefer specific genre recommendation videos, or genre themed videos? Also, if you enjoyed it, please leave this video a like, comment other books that you also felt read like movies, or books that made you forget you were reading. And please subscribe to my channel. I would love for you to stick around. Alrighty, book besties, bye!